All right, recording has started, and this is the July 25th, 2024 Crossplane Community Meeting. Let's go ahead, as always, and grab a quick link to the agenda document, and I will throw that into the chat right now. So if anybody doesn't have access to the agenda document yet, it's right there. And, typically we don't have a ton of things. It looks like a lot of stuff on the agenda, but it's not all that much. We'll get through it fairly quickly, I think. And there's plenty of room for other folks to add topics that they want to get through. So let's hop into it then. All right. So upcoming, biggest thing right now for us is 1.17. We are on the tail end of the milestone here. We've been advertising an early August release date. So I took a bit of time this morning to kind of figure out a more specific date for that, given what's in flights and whatnot. And so it looks like I think that we could do targeting August 13th as the release date for 1.17. So that means that this coming Tuesday will be the big feature, the high level feature freeze. And then the following Tuesday, actually, let's just look at the calendar because that's going to be easier for folks visually. So let's look at that here. So you can see here so this coming Tuesday, the 30th would be a feature freeze. The following Tuesday would be a code freeze. And then that puts the release day right around the 13th. So still early August, yes, but more towards the middle, let's say. We will monitor that. That's the plan right now. But as I've said a couple times, one of the biggest features we have in flight right now is the cloud changelogs feature, which I'm driving. And I definitely will still consider holding the release to get that merged and at quality and get that as part of 1.17. So let's look at the roadmap, or sorry, the release board here. And I think this is pretty up to date because I went through it this morning too. A big takeaway here is that, yeah, we've got a lot of stuff done already, 23 items in the done column, but then we've got basically 10 or 11 items that are in flight. So there are PRs to review, things to follow up on, plenty of things that are in progress that we want to go ahead and finalize. I think this one for Earthly build feedback stuff, I think that's mostly converged. I think that's, we've been using Earthly as the build system for core Crossplane for like 2 months now or so, and we're going to run this release with it. It seems like it's okay, so that's probably not much to worry about. Let's see if there's any PRs here that we need to ask some questions about. I think most of this stuff is fairly well known. Is there anything that folks are working on that is not on the board right now that we should be adding? I think we're good. Okay. Yeah, so plenty of stuff in flight. Bob, was there anything that was on your radar?
Not specifically. There's a couple of things I'm interested in, but it's not going to make 17. So
Got it. Things maybe to keep in scope for 1.18, or are they within core crossplane, or like are they outside of that, like providers and such?
no, I mean one would be core crossplane. I'd really like to figure out composition selection based on composite composite values and not just labels. I think that would be more useful
Oh,
as a top level. Right now label selection works great on nested composites, but putting on labels on claims to do composition selection is a kind of a awkward thing. So anyway, I didn't mind to get you off track.
and Bob, do you have handy the issue number for that one? Is that like in the project and part of
I
the
don't think I
board and
started to
stuff?
open an issue and I don't think I ever actually finished it. So
Okay.
um, I will finish writing that. And I did run it by Nick and he was a little bit ambivalent about it. Um, but maybe I can convince him. So
All right, so at this point, it's a good idea, or an idea, not something like on the roadmap and prioritized.
correct.
Got it.
I'm not
Cool.
sure it's a good idea, but we'll see about that. But
All right. And Hassan, was there anything on your mind as well, as we're kind of trying to get closer to wrapping up 1.17?
No, nothing from my side.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. All right, so we've got some recent features that were merged. We've been talking about Dalton's effort for being able to surface errors and status and such from the composition function pipeline up to the claim level and being selective about what specific errors make it up to the claim level. So it's definitely a very big step forward for the user experience for folks, your application developers and whatnot that are using claims. So that is merged in, and part of that will be included in 1.17. There's also a big improvement for performance of the trace command that we are using concurrency to do multiple things in parallel, and that got that merged as well too. I think there's some other things that I'm forgetting right now, but those are in, those will be included. They should be in the done column on the board, making lots of progress there. So as we talked about then, what is in flight? The biggest thing I think that we're still trying to include here is this cloud change logs feature. So if folks haven't yet got a chance, the design doc is it's been open a couple weeks now. There's been a little bit of conversation on it and some good feedback. But if folks want to take a look at this, if they're interested in being able to essentially track all the things that the changes that your providers are making to your cloud resources and have that in kind of like an auditable log sort of thing. That's what this feature is. And I've been building it on the side and made a lot of progress on it. So this, I think we're converging on the design, and the code is making good progress. So it is not too late for feedback, though, if people have good ideas or things they want to see. So comments and engagement on this is still certainly welcome. And as always, also, there's a couple helpful links here for folks that are looking to pick up some work and be contributing. There are issues, so all of our issues that are P0, P1, the most impactful issues that are still unassigned. You can click on these links here and take a whack at those if you want to. Are good first issues as well for folks that are maybe newer contributors. Those are listed here as well. So folks looking to get involved, we always have those opportunities. All right. Anything else on 1.17? All right. Then we will try to deliver. And since this meeting is monthly or every 4 weeks, we do expect to have the release out by the next time we meet. So that is certainly the goal, that I do not want to see all your friendly faces again before the 1.17 release is out. Let's set that as a goal, everybody. All right, providers. Let's talk about providers then. I think Jean's still on his iPhone, so I don't want to bother him. Let's see if is anybody else who wants to take this section here. Otherwise, I'll do it. All right. Yep. So I want to list like all the provider releases here. So the release notes and all the details about those releases are linked here, so you can take a look at those and peruse those. Bob, was there anything in provider Terraform specifically that you wanted to call out here?
I think there was supposed to be an optimization in there around, we pulled in the new go-getter that was supposed to, well, it fixed a security hole, and it was supposed to make our handling of remote module source more efficient. I'm not sure that actually worked the way we thought it was going to work. So I've actually opened an issue for a new remote module pull policy that I think we should probably add. Because right now we're basically pulling the remote source on every reconciliation because we don't know whether it's changed or not, which is kind of inefficient. So we're going to thinking about putting in a pull policy that'll say, either keep doing that or only pull it if it's not there. So.
Cool, Bob. That sounds good. Thanks for taking the time to write that idea up here in good detail, it looks like, as well. So great. Yep, that's awesome. Yeah, it's good to get those ideas out of your head and onto digital paper, Bob.
That's the trick, yeah.
Even better to get them codified into the code base. That's the trick, dude. Cool. Okay. If folks have other, I took a quick look through announcements on Slack and whatnot. I didn't see any other recent provider releases, but I'm sure they are out there. So if folks want to add any releases they've done in their particular providers, feel free to add it to the agenda doc. We'll get it merged in. All right. So bigger investments that we're making. So it looks like recently there may be a bit of increased resource usage in some of the big cloud providers, the main cloud providers. So that looks to be an issue that we're investigating into. I don't think we have a resolution or a culprit yet on that, but that looks like that's being treated with priority. And then, Bob, is this Terraform provider applicant process? Is that kind of talking about the issue you were just talking about? Is that same thing, or is that? Oh, sorry, no, that is not. That is for the underlying Terraform providers that are part of object generator providers. Like, how do we go through improving and optimizing the upgrades of those over time, and how do we automate those and remove some of the manual inefficiencies? So that's being invested in as well. And as always, a reminder of there is a specific SIG for Upjet related providers and on Upjet framework and stuff. So you're always welcome to join that meeting. They meet regularly, I think every 2 weeks, and discuss everything there. All right, anything else on providers for folks? Let's keep on moving then. Okay, so to the rest of the community topics. So as always, we've got a bunch of different content about Crossplane and videos and talks and all sorts of stuff. Christina, yeah, you're here. Excellent talk of yours recently. Was that at Platform Day or Platform Con or whatever? Is that where that was?
That was GitOpsCon.
Ah,
It was actually it was in April. I'm already losing track of the month. So yeah, that was in April.
nice. Do you have any other upcoming talks, Christina? Your talks are always highly rated. What's next on the docket for you?
Nothing right now. I'm just bracing for KubeCon and reInvent, but those are not out yet.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, hopefully you'll get some news in the upcoming weeks that you've got plenty more talks to prepare
Yeah.
for. I assume your colleague Carlos will as well. You see his name in a lot of places for speaking as well.
Yeah, it was interesting because actually this talk was a follow that the previous session to this talk was Blake and Carlos, which was
Right
awesome
on.
as well.
Nice. Awesome. Um, another piece of news that I actually did want to share with folks because I was quite happy with it, and you folks are the ones to thank for this, right? The CNCF released like a latest project velocity look about projects and how they're growing and stuff like that. And so let's make that a little bigger. So Crossplane. Over the last year, the folks that are contributing to Crossplane and getting involved there grew by 20%. Which was, we were already in the like top 20 or so of CNCF projects. There's almost 200 of them. We were in the top 20 for like number of contributors and people getting involved. And I think now we've cracked either the top 10 or the top 15. So we went up like 8 places or something like that, which is super cool to see. And it's awesome that folks continue to get involved. Folks are contributing code. Folks are opening issues and docs and all sorts of stuff. So it's fantastic to see us, towards the upper end of this rather overloaded graph right now. But we're on the top side of it. So that's super cool to see. And thanks everybody here for obviously being a big part of that, right? All right. If folks have more news and content and stuff to share, feel free to do so. And if a quick note too, if folks are doing meetups, like there was one in Frankfurt, one in Edinburgh, folks talking about Crossplane, always feel free to reach out to me if you want to get like some stickers and stuff, and I could probably hook that up. So you can maybe show up with a little bit of swag to the meetups that you're speaking at. All right. So we've been participating, as we know, in the Linux Foundation's mentorship program. So we are about halfway through the term now. So Ines, I don't think he's on the call, but Ines has been working hard on investing in the validate command for the Crossplane CLI. So he's done a whole lot of work at maturing that towards GA maturity and adding some missing functionality and features. I think he's already gotten like 3 or 4 PRs merged. There's 2 open PRs right now as well. So Ines is doing a whole bunch of work and going pretty hard on this stuff. So you see, you know, the task list for moving the validate subcommand to GA continues to make progress. I think there's a PR open for this one, there's a PR open for this one, and a PR open for that one as well. So I think pretty much everything in this list has PRs open, and we'll continue to get those merged and maybe be able to call validate you know, GA, promote it from beta within this release. That would be really freaking cool. So thank you, Ines, if you listen to this recording later on. Thanks for all your hard work so far, and looking forward to the second half of the mentorship term here in the summer, or summer for the Northern Hemisphere, that is. Okay, cool. I just wanted to share this link as well for folks that the webinar that Victor and I had done like a month ago or so about the 1.16 release, and also how to get involved in contributing to the Crossplane project. There's a link here for watching that on demand. And at the end of it was a, you know, pretty decent section on how to contribute. And I would love to get those resources, you know, merged in somewhere into core Crossplane in the docs or in the contributing section, whatever, so that that's more accessible for people. Because right now the only time I've spent on it is, you know, putting it into slides and the webinar we did. So I wanna get that into a more accessible format for people. So hopefully we'll be able to do that soon. All right, so there was some demand from folks that wanted to get involved in the documentation for Crossplane more. So we took a couple steps here since the last meeting, I believe, to kind of bootstrap a new SIG around docs. This one's a little bit different just due to resource constraints right now, where we are spread a little thin across the teams, but we wanted to get something going. So we got we async bootstrapped a special interest group for docs. So if you want to get involved, you know, the conversation is happening, you know, in the SIG Docs channel on the Crossplane Slack. You can click on these links here. But basically, the start here was to get organized about what are priorities for Crossplane Docs. And so the top priorities that we have identified there, there's a couple that are around content, and then there's a couple around the docs experience. So for content, we are a bit overdue to updating the docs to take a functions first approach. You know, there's still the main walkthroughs and flows of the docs are still focusing on you know, classic patch and transform approach, and you know, they mention functions in certain places, but it's not part of the mainline path through the quick starts in the docs. So that's something we want to do to, as part of maturing functions and getting that GA, and just have that be the default that people experience when they're using Crossplane. As well, we want to be able to, like, the community and ecosystem around providers and extensions, you know, has continued to grow, and there's a lot of really useful stuff there. There's been some struggles and some issues that it's difficult to understand how the process for releasing them and maintaining them and putting out patches and all that stuff. So we want to do a little bit more effort to get that written down to enable the provider and extension ecosystem to be more productive and have less headaches. So those are the top 2 priorities that I have for the SIG for content. And you know, we are more than welcoming folks to come in and help out, you know, put pen to paper and get those things written down. For the experience, I think these things have come a long way, but improving the search, I think that's still got some work to do. You know, I still cannot find things that I'm looking for sometimes when I'm searching for it. So like, there's definitely improvements we can make there. And then there's definitely some improvements around finding things on the page as well. Stuff is like hidden behind these little collapsed boxes and people just never see them. So it's just bothering me very badly that we have content that folks don't see. Which is basically as bad as no content at all if folks can't find it, right? So those are the top priorities for SIG Docs. And once again, if folks want to get involved in that and help out with this stuff, we definitely need contributors to get involved in that so we can make some progress. All right. Feel free to stop me at any time if anybody's got questions. Again, I'm always happy to be interrupted. All right. I think, yeah, this is since the last community meeting. So a quick update on graduation for the Crossplane project, but it's not a good update. Basically, the TOC, the Technical Oversight Committee, as we have talked about before, they changed the process of how to graduate and what documentation and justification and paperwork you have to do. They changed that after we applied and got all of our proposal put together in its infinite glory. So we were hoping we got some guidance to just hang out for a bit and see if that would be applicable to in-flight proposals. And unfortunately, as of 2 weeks ago, it is applicable. So the TOC has specifically asked us to go back and redo our proposal to be in alignment with the new process. So we need to do that. It's definitely unfortunate because it's a bit of time that we don't really have an abundance of right now at all. So it's unfortunate, but it is something we have to do. I'm trying to get guidance with folks about like what's the timeline for this, because I don't want us to get caught, like where we get to the top of the queue and it's our turn to go through due diligence and we haven't done this yet. But we have competing priorities right now, like shipping 1.17. So I can't really just stop everything and do this right now. So trying to figure that out and navigate that. But yeah, that's the update for graduation right now. And to be clear, I don't think we have any problems with meeting the requirements. The new requirements aren't things we can't do. It's just taking the time to go through the paperwork and the bureaucracy to document it all. All right, quick update on Dosu. We talked about this last time, and this is actually kind of cool because Dosu is a AI project here that can help automate some tasks for open source projects or just software projects in general, and be able to do like auto responses and find duplicate issues and stuff like that. From our last community meeting, we talked about this possibility, and the founder of Dosu saw the recording and reached out. And so we actually got to meet with them and talk through all the functionality and get a better understanding of how we could adopt Dosu in an incremental way, so that it we kind of build trust and confidence in it as we go along. So it was cool. It was really cool getting to meet Devin. And I'm really grateful for the founder there to spend some time with us. So we do want to get this set up. I think it would be beneficial to have Dosu doing some automating some tasks here that the maintainer team doesn't really have enough bandwidth to handle all the time. So we think this would be beneficial, but once again, we want to do this in an incremental way so that we can kind of test it out and make sure that the Dosu is being helpful and not causing more confusion. So we were looking to set that up soon. Once again, just got to find some time to go and sit down with it and get it ready.
On the Dosu conversation, is there plans to just do it on contrib stuff or just core crossplane? What I'm specifically thinking about is, I know, especially when you're early adopting Crossplane, if you have an issue with a provider, you're very common to go to the just core Crossplane issues and say, hey, there's an issue with Upjet provider or AWS, for example. But really the issue should be filed in Upjet AWS. And I didn't know if we were just planning on having it core Crossplane, like CNCF Crossplane, or if the plan was also just kind of open source Upjet AWS stuff.
Yeah. Good question, Blake. So I think it's totally reasonable to have it in both, to have it on the Crossplane org as well as the contrib org. That's both those fall under the governance of the Crossplane project and like the CNCF support of the Crossplane project, and essentially paying the bill for Dosu would apply to both. So it seems totally reasonable for me to have it available in both. You bring up a really good question, because like for instance, in GitHub, you can't transfer an issue from one organization across boundaries to another organization. So I wonder if there would be issues for the little Dosu bot to be able to understand things across organizational boundaries as well, or how that would work. But it should be turned on in both, I think.
Gotcha.
We'll see what that little bot can do. All right. Yeah, so last update here before we move into Christian's conversation as well and other topics for folks. So steering committee, we meet every month as well, in between the off weeks from the community meeting. So 2 weeks ago, steering committee got together, and the big topic to discuss there was a follow-up from our last community meeting, where folks have brought up the general situation of the provider ecosystem or the extension ecosystem in general, when there are extensions out there that are not maintained, but there is desire to use them or desire to get involved. So we don't have a process for this right now. That was kind of the gap that was identified. And folks brought that up last community meeting and had a good conversation about it. So we talked more about it as the steering committee. And we're pretty much in agreement with like what folks kind of want to see out of this, I believe. So what we kind of decided is that, it is a good idea for, the Crossplane project leadership to be able to enable folks to have velocity on the projects that they care about, right? So, we all have an interest in the project being successful and for sustainability of the community. So essentially, we've sketched out, it has not been formally ratified into the governance yet, but we sketched out, as a group there, like what a process would look like for if you've got a provider that is not maintained anymore. And how do we get new people involved in that, and what's the governance around that? So basically, what that process would look like is that first we need to make some attempts to communicate with the current maintainers, through multiple means of communication. Just make sure that we, either they're not responsive or get in touch with them in some way. And then the steering committee, would be involved in if there's somebody who wants to get, to basically step up into a maintainer position. We could do some vetting of that. So, just kind of understanding like what is that person's commitment to it, like what are their goals, like or would they be a good fit for maintaining that? Because it's not a likely scenario to happen, but we do want to avoid bad actors, right? We don't want people to come in, be a maintainer, and for it not to be for the good of the project. So basically, do a bit of vetting there, and then go through the formal voting process that is outlined in the governance for essentially conflict resolution, voting on issues. So then that would give the a new maintainer, basically give them access to that repo and be able to hit the ground running and maintain the provider going forward. So we have a couple instances of this right now. I think it was for Cloudflare and maybe for Alibaba as well. So, we should take the time to add this to the formal governance so we follow our policies and we're acting always in accordance with the project's governance. That is important. But I did want to report to this group here that, we've got a process sketched out. This is what this looks like. And this is a scenario which we should be supporting, on the side of velocity for the project and sustainability as well. Any questions on that process, that idea? All right. Well, cool. All right, sweet. So I don't think there were any other agenda items for the main section here. So I'll just do one more call for that. If folks had, core section agenda items they wanted to discuss, we can bring those up now. Otherwise, then we'll go to Christian next. All right. Christian, do you wanna take this and introduce this idea here?
Yeah, sure. Do you hear me?
A little soft. I can hear some background like fans and noise, but the voice was kind of
you're on.
low.
Yeah, one sec.
Yes.
Is it better now?
Yep, I can hear you very well now, Christian. Yes.
Yeah, wrong microphone. All right. So yeah, we've been using Crossplane for a little while at our company, and we've had issues with the object provider when we're growing on a larger scale of the number of resources. And one thing we've noticed is that we're hitting rate limiting for the Azure provider, for instance, pretty easily. And just, for example, restarting the provider pod would trigger the rate limiting because it basically resyncs all of the resources that are present in the cluster. And so it does an external call on every resource just to figure out if everything is synced and ready and all that stuff, which kind of doesn't necessarily make sense all the time because let's say you just synced all of the resources and you just restart the pod, it's going to redo the check again, but you just did it like 2 minutes ago. So I figured that maybe having some kind of just like saving the external reconcile time and then figuring out if we've passed the sync interval before doing an external call would help on that side. It will also like improve the performance overall. If you have a large number of resources, then you won't necessarily sync them all on a restart. So yeah, basically we've implemented our own custom provider for Azure, not using Ubjet, just using the actual Go SDK from Azure. And we've seen a huge performance increase in general, and also adding that improvement with the hashing of the spec and the saving the reconcile time. also helped a lot to reduce the number of calls and not hit the rate limiting. I do have a few screenshots that I can share.
Yeah, actually, if you want to share those right now, Christian, that sounds pretty cool, actually.
Yeah,
I
sure.
just stopped sharing, so you should be able to share if you want.
Ooh, I'm not sure. I'm on the web right now. I don't know if I can share.
Oh, yeah, that I don't know, actually.
Yeah, I think I'll just paste the screenshots in the chat. Won't be too long. If I can actually type. What the heck? Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's typing. Oh, there you go. Yeah, actually, there you go. Okay, so that's one screenshot.
Cool. I'll start sharing my screen again then to show that off.
Yeah, maybe that's the
Okay,
easier.
sure. Okay. that
So
should
the
be
first
this one
screenshot.
here.
Yeah,
So if I
sorry
zoom
about
in.
the random website. I couldn't find that one. Anyways,
There we go. That's easier to see. Oh,
yeah.
oh,
Oh
dang.
boy.
There we go. Can I close these ads? Yeah, we can.
Maybe
we
right
kind of
click
see stuff.
and yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Open image in new tab. Yeah, it's gonna be perfect.
There we go. There we go. There we go.
Much cleaner. So yeah, you can see that on the left side is our new custom provider, and on the right side is the object provider. And we have around something like 4,000 Fed creds and 2,000 something managed identities. Well, user assigned identities actually. And then you can see on the right side where the big drop happens on the synced state. Well, that's just basically a pod restart of the provider.
So
And
all of them going to like synced false at this time as the provider is restarting.
exactly. So it
Okay.
they basically turn to false because it hits the rate limiting very early as soon as it restarts, because it's spamming the API server, the API from Azure, and we have so many resources. Then it just hits the rate limiting. It becomes gets 429s, but basically the Azure SDK tries to respect the 429s and retry and eventually work, but it doesn't work because Crossplane sets a maximum timeout of I think 60 seconds per resource or per call, and so it basically just times out from the Crossplane runtime, and so everything turns to false on the synced side, and it takes forever to eventually get back to a stable state. You can see the timing is pretty long, and we never actually managed to reach the point before we actually delete the resources. And on the left side, so we have just our custom provider using the SDK and the controller runtime from Crossplane, and yeah, it just syncs pretty fast. Doesn't hit the rate limiting. We used obviously a different identity to contact the API server, but yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, these are definitely interesting graphs to show. So one thing I was curious about, and Hassan and Bob, and Blake and others, I'm definitely gonna be curious about your opinions here as well. So feel free to weigh in a second here. But one thing, Christian, that you mentioned, that like the performance is better overall. Would you say that that's like in this particular scenario or in this dimension of performance, there's a drastic improvement, or do you see like, let's say the scenario where you create in the initial creation of resources, is the throughput improved for that as well? Is it across the board performance throughputs, or is it mainly this scenario?
Well, I haven't actually measured it per se, so it's hard to tell. But I think overall the performance is better, is like significantly better without object. But it's mostly on a larger scale. Again, like on a small number of resources, it's not that bad, to be honest, from what I've seen. But I haven't measured it, so I can't say for sure.
Right. Sure. Okay. That makes sense.
Uh,
Yeah, Hassan?
yeah, I have a couple of questions and thoughts. Like, first of all, I think thanks for sharing this. This is definitely valuable for us. One first question is for the object-based provider, did that include the architectural changes that we made recently to object, or is it the previous version of provider object Azure without those changes?
We were basically on the latest version, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just verify. We're currently on 1.4.0 of the Azure provider.
Okay, so
I think that does include the architecture
yeah.
change, if I'm not mistaken.
So you compare performance against this version, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it could be something from past. So yeah, I think for the restarts, currently the only mechanism that we could have could be the max reconcile rate argument in the providers. So I don't know if you have had a chance to you know poke with that value and whether setting it to a lower value helps or not, but it could slow down the requests against the Azure API. But even in that case, this is definitely not a perfect solution and not as good as what you implemented on your own implementation. So I think it definitely makes sense to, especially for restart cases, to take a implement some solution at Crossplane runtime level so that all providers can benefit from that.
Yeah, we did play around with the reconcile rate. The problem is if we lowered it too much, it was becoming just too slow for the number of resources we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the queue would just never go down. Actually, if you could open, Jared, sorry, the other screenshots that I sent
Oh,
in the chat.
yep, in the chat. Yeah, let me see that
Yeah,
one too.
there's the two last ones. Basically,
right.
I forgot to put a title on those, but I think the first one, let me just verify. Yeah, okay, so the first one is actually the new provider that we did. You can see the queue depth goes down pretty fast. It just goes up as soon as it starts, and then it processes them, and it's pretty much done after that. But if you look at the other screenshot is from the Upjet provider, and you can see that the queue just is constant and just never goes down, or it goes very, very slowly down, even though like no matter what kind of reconcile rate we set, it was just because of the 429s, it would just never complete.
Well, and if you
Okay.
set the reconcile rate too low, right, then you run into the problem of just never getting everything in sync.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. So for the number of resources we have, we can't go that low.
So for object-based one, do you suspect some like object related issues, like, or in another like words, if we had that like that's storing the last reconciliation time somehow in status or something, and in the restart, if we had checked that, and if it is not bigger than the poll interval, we didn't go to the Azure API. Would you expect some performance differences still?
Well, it would definitely reduce the chance of getting a rate limiting from the Azure API. I think the main performance problem maybe is how the rate limiting is handled by like the combination of Upjet and the Azure, the Terraform provider itself, or the Azure SDK under that, because as I said, I think the only error we're seeing is context deadline exceeded. And I think that just comes from the 60-second limit that Crossplane sets when it tries to reconcile a resource. And on the other hand, the Azure SDK tries to respect the 429s and just like does a retry on the calls based on the header that it receives from the Azure API. So it just keeps retrying until Crossplane just kills the context, and that's what happens. So I think if that part is fixed in the Upjet provider, it would probably become usable again for us in our use case.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah, I would be interested to see like how your custom provider performs if you didn't have that like check off in case of restart prevent reconciliation and a comparison. And also for object based one, I think you are right. Like there is the Terraform layer in between, and that could also be retrying behind the scenes, but Crossplane runtime is not aware and canceling
Yeah.
the context, etc. Yeah.
And Christian, how like the custom provider you've written, how exactly does that handle, like if it gets rate limiting from Azure's endpoints? does it even hit that, or like are you set up so that it doesn't even hit that, or how does it handle that scenario?
Yeah, I don't. Well, we're just using the Azure SDK, so I think it handles it by itself. But we're still subject, since we're using Crossplane runtime, we're still subject to the 60-second limit, which is, by the way, I think hard coded in the code, and it's not configurable. So maybe that'll be something that could be exposed. Because, for example, let's say you create a Kubernetes cluster in Azure, it takes way more than 60 seconds. It takes like, sometimes 20 minutes. So it would be nice to have a configurable maybe point for that. But on our side, I think just because we did that optimization, we're just not hitting the rate limiting anymore. And so we don't really have to deal with it for now. But I believe that if we do hit the rate limiting, we'll probably see the same behavior where it's going to get context deadline exceeded and so forth.
Got it.
The context deadline exceeded is coming from you hitting Kubernetes API, right? Or are you getting context deadline exceeded when you're actually talking to Azure?
No, it is when talking to Azure. So I think it's the context that's sent. Well, I tried to dig into the Crossplane runtime code, and it's like, feels like it's the context that's sent when calling like the Terraform provider or the resource external sync.
Interesting.
And it's set to 60-second. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know there's resources that do take longer than like 60 seconds to reconcile, and there's the object configuration to say, hey, this is an async resource, and you shouldn't, sit around waiting for it. So I thought, I could be wrong. I thought Upjet had some method where if it saw rate limiting, it would do like an exponential back off, but maybe I'm missing or forgetting what Upjet does. Where are you storing the provider, the hash and status?
We basically just added 2 fields in the status of our MRs. But yeah, it's like it's custom to our MRs, so it would be nice to have it directly in Crossplane runtime. But we have 2 fields. One of them is the hash, and one of them is the reconcile time, the external reconcile time.
The only problem I think I have with that is if your reconcile time is constantly changing, how much load are you putting on your Kubernetes API by constantly changing that MR to say when it was last reconciled?
Well, you're not constantly changing. You're just changing it every time it's being reconciled externally, which means at your sync policy, which by default I think is 1 hour.
Well, yeah,
so it's not too bad.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, and so Blake, you brought up a good point that I was going to bring up as well about like the async behavior of which I think is by default for Upjet providers, where like when they're doing like a create operation, they'll kick it off asynchronously and then return flow back to the reconciliation, so that can end and then get picked up again later. But it sounds like there's the handling here, which we're kind of identifying, I think, is the handling of what happens when you can't even kick off an operation, like to do like an observe or an update or whatever. You can't even do that because you're hitting rate limiting on the cloud provider side. So you can't really return flow from back to the main reconciler because you haven't even gotten an answer from the cloud provider yet. It sounds like there is some deficiency in the way that's being handled that Christian's identified. So that may be like a definite thing to look into here to like investigate first of like, is there some inefficiencies there that would greatly reduce this problem? So Christian, I think this evidence that you found here is definitely really interesting. And do you want to open up an issue, or have you already, in Upjet to kind of like show what you found and see if like we could do some investigation into how like rate limiting is handled and if there's like some smarter things to do there?
I do have an issue about the performance itself, but yeah, I'll send it.
Oh, you'd already do? Okay. Yeah, if you want to
that's
put that in the chat, then we can.
Oh, yeah.
Is that this one here, 740?
Yeah, that's the one I just sent. But that was basically because we were initially investigating that issue. I think that's when the Upjet architecture change was done, and we started seeing the drops in the synced and all that stuff. But it's not exactly related to rate limiting because we didn't know it was rate limiting at that time. But I believe
interesting.
I believe there is an issue about rate limiting in general in Upjet. I would have to check, but I think I saw one.
And Christian, in the chat, I think Jean's on his iPhone, so he put it into the chat. He's saying that like if you could attend the next SIG Upjet meeting, to discuss this further there with, you know, like the Upjet maintainers and more of the experts there, like that sounds like a really good place to be synchronously discussing this as well.
Yeah, definitely. I did attend one of them a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And I did talk about that problem slightly, but we do have more details now, so
Yeah.
hopefully I can help a little more dig into that.
Yeah, awesome, man. Because yeah, to getting to a point where like we've really identified this is clearly what the problem is and like a solution for it, then you know being able to find the resources or you know whoever wants to contribute that to you know have like a clear change to make would be really really cool. But like all this information, this data, and this story you're telling here is you know starting to paint a pretty well researched picture. So that's really really helpful, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I also
Thank you.
threw that issue in there. It does. I know we've had issues with async specifically in Upjet. I know I've seen personally issues with the way async is. It's not always perfect the way it works in Upjet. So if I know there's been problems identified with it that you know need fixes in Upjet side.
Christian, something that's like super interesting to me is that like in a lot of performance dimensions, the new, you know, Upjet provider architecture to not fork new Terraform processes and all that jazz, like was drastically improving a lot of things like, you know, mean time to readiness and how many concurrent resources could be worked on and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see that for your scenario with, you know, with, you know, a good chunk of resources clearly, but then like, you know, this like sync storm type of behavior perhaps is really interesting to see that performance dimension actually is worse from the previous architecture. That's super interesting to see that and kind of compelling, honestly.
Yeah.
So that's let me just decorate these a little bit more here. And so yeah, then we'll look at the calendar just like a less than 3-digit number issue here from good old Moafik as well. That's interesting to see. Thanks for finding that one, Blake. Yeah, okay, so let's look at the calendar then too, real quick, just together, to see when the next SIG Upjet meeting is. Let's see. Sweet, looks like 6 days away. So on the 31st, there is a SIG Upjet meeting there that would probably be the great next step to, you know, whatever other evidence you're able to add to these issues or, you know, things you're able to write down there, Christian, but, you know, having everybody be able to discuss it at that meeting sounds like the great next step.
Yeah, sounds good. That said, that's specifically for Upjet, but my suggestion is still kind of applies for Crossplane runtime, which is more generic and more applicable to all types of controllers. I still think that making external calls on a pod restart is like intense. So I don't know if where the right place would be to talk about that or to suggest that just directly
Yeah.
in the Crossplane runtime GitHub repo.
Yeah.
Actually, I do have an issue on that. Just post
You
that
do?
here. Yeah,
Where's that
there
one?
you go.
696. Okay. Okay, awesome. So yeah, you already do have an issue there. That's great. And thank you for doing that.
Yeah, just based off what Christian's saying, it does smell like this is probably something on the controller runtime that or crossplane runtime that makes sense to look into more. I mean, obviously Upjet has some problems with the way async works, but I think that
Yeah, it's two different problems, I think,
Yeah.
because they can be attacked separately, and
Yeah,
they
totally.
both
Yeah.
have their own advantages.
Yeah, yep, that makes sense. Awesome. So Christian, yeah, this is super useful to have all this information and kind of identifying where some weak points are, seeing where, you know, it's possible to make improvements and stuff. And so a really good conversation today too. Thanks Hassan and thanks Blake for participating as well.
Awesome, thank you
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, awesome. So yeah, we'll try to find follow-up time on all that stuff there. And yeah, like it can't be stated like how useful it is to have people, you know, finding these things, you know, and not being silent about them, but reporting them and like getting conversations going. Like that's so helpful. So that's awesome, Christian.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, cool. So I think that's everything then for today. We can go ahead and wrap it up here. Thanks for everybody's participation and engagement here. It was super good to see everybody. And as I said before, I want the 1.17 release to be out before I see this group again. All right. See you, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.